There's a moment that happens in secure relationships that doesn't get talked about enough. It's the moment after something goes a little wrong. Maybe you misunderstood each other. Maybe someone said something awkward. Maybe someone jumped to a conclusion. It was me. I jumped to the conclusion. And instead of your brain going, "Oh no, this is it. The relationship is over," something different happens. Your nervous system stays calm enough to believe we'll figure it out. For a lot of late diagnosed neurodivergent adults, that moment can feel almost unbelievable. Security feels foreign to us because so many of us learned how to be in relationships while masking, while experiencing anxiety or depression, and overthinking everything. Hey, I'm Dr. Regina, Ph.D., and this is Divergent Paths, the podcast where we talk about things late diagnosed neurodivergent folks experience and how to work with your brain instead of against it. If you want tools and extra support, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Nerd Notes. The link is in the show description. For this episode, Russ and I are talking about something much more useful than just the textbook definition of secure attachment. We're talking about how people move toward it, because secure attachment isn't an inherent trait. It's a nervous system rebalance that you can build toward over time.
Oh, Regina, this is such a great episode, and I'm so excited about it because after this episode, after I learned, you've got 5 steps for us, and after those 5 steps, it's going to be so good that I will have literally no more conflict in relationships, and I'll be able to communicate perfectly. That's what this means, right?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we'll go through the 5 steps anyway.
Yes. Having a secure attachment doesn't mean you get to avoid conflict, and it doesn't mean everything in your life works perfectly and all your relationships are just blissed out, unfortunately.
If we could somehow develop that plan.
If we could find those 5 steps to the blissed out perfect relationship.
Every podcast listener ever would.
Right. We would, with the most downloads ever. That would be it. We would just, we'd be done. It would be a mic drop. Yeah, right. We'd be great.
100%. All right. So what is, let's define it. What's the secure
So you build toward a secure attachment through consistent emotional responsiveness. When you have a consistent relationship, when you can move away from trying to be perfect, right? You're not going to be perfect in your responses. You're not always going to respond immediately. You're not going to take care of everything as soon as it happens. What you will recognize over time is that when something emotional happens, when there is, like I said in the open, a misunderstanding or something's awkward or you jump to a conclusion, you know that the relationship will respond to it. And that creates a sense of safety. Because as we've said in the other, as we talked about anxious attachment and we talked about avoidant attachment, these were patterns that you developed to create a sense of safety for yourself. So what a secure attachment creates is that it is going to consistently be there.
So how is it complicated for people who are late diagnosed?
Well, a lot of us grew up in environments where that kind of emotional consistency wasn't available to us. It wasn't because the people around us didn't care about it. It was often that when you're neurodivergent, you experience emotions very intensely. You process things a little differently. You take a lot of information in, and sometimes you need, like I have said before, I'm an external processor. I have to talk through things to really see what I'm experiencing. That rejection sensitivity comes in where you react strongly to correction, to perceived rejection, to feeling misunderstood. And then we get labeled sensitive, dramatic, etc. Mm-hmm. And so those emotions don't get to create a sense of stability. Instead, they create shame, and that causes you to withdraw from the connection. And that creates our kind of problem.
Let's get into, even though they don't, fix everything, they're going to step towards a better relationship. So let's start with what's step one.
Step one is kind of stepping back from your life and recognizing what your patterns are. Identifying your patterns, what your historical patterns have been, is the first step. Awareness is key. I'm going to quiz you a little bit.
Uh-oh. Okay.
So let's see what you remember. What are some of the patterns that we see with people who have an anxious attachment?
I wasn't aware that there was going to be a test. Uh,
I got to keep you on your toes a little bit here.
um, but I would say was there something about you just mentioned the having to work things out externally. That's making me think of there was external validation.
Yes.
Was there
Yeah.
something like that? Was
Yeah.
that
Looking for like external validation, needing reassurance. Yep. Yep.
okay?
Yep.
Like a was there a clinginess about
Kind
this
of.
one?
That is definitely how people who tend anxious get described sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Okay.
worried, they're seeking that connection. And so if you pull away, they tend to move faster toward you.
Okay, we got two dings. I need to insert like dings as I got these questions right. Like
Yeah.
ding, ding. I'll see if I can edit those in. I mean, it's sort of there's a push pull a little bit, right? There was something about a push pull
There's push
where
pull with
you want the
anxious and
person to be
avoidant if you're in a relationship with someone who has a differing style than you. Yep. Yep.
okay,
There's the push
okay,
pull. Anxious people who have anxious patterns tend to overthink, which is what you just displayed after I put you on the spot here.
okay. That I did totally.
But you did get the big ones, which are that need for reassurance, the fear of abandonment, and that tendency to overthink and overprocess, which is external sometimes. And they do tend to get
Okay,
labeled clingy. Now, do you remember avoidant?
avoidant. You want some distance?
Yes.
You want some distance, right?
Yep.
But also, don't you also want closeness? Distance, closeness. It's kind of
Yes, it's sort
a
of a
little bit.
traditional avoidant, like feels overwhelmed by closeness and wants that distance after, like emotional
Okay.
intensity, is overwhelming. So they kind of they want some time to process after that emotional closeness. So it's not that they don't want the closeness, it's that they need, space to process after.
Okay. I'm now I'm going to display one by shutting down from this test. Shutting down after
So
conflict.
yes, shutting down after conflict is another, pattern that we see. Moving away and not being able to sort of sit in a place of needing repair or comfort in the relationship. So a lot of people who are neurodivergent do tend to struggle with a little bit of both of these, which we described as the fearful avoidant attachment when you kind of bounce between them. But like handedness, generally attachments have a particular one that you tend to favor, right? In this first step, the goal here isn't to go in and like eliminate the patterns. You're just looking to recognize them so that you can respond differently.
Okay. Do we want to get into like what some of those different responses would be before we jump to step two, or
Sure. We can
because
talk a little bit about
I'm
that.
interested. I want to hear more.
Yeah. Well, I can talk a little bit about this personally.
I mean, there might be a test in the future. I gotta know these
Right,
things.
yeah. So I have talked about like I'm, healing an anxious attachment, which comes from losing my dad early in my life. I was 13 when my dad passed away, which was before Russ knew me, but not much before he knew me. And I think that fear of abandonment has sort of been a constant in my attachments. So, one of the things that I'm actively doing to move into a secure attachment is recognizing when I feel anxious and not pushing into immediate reassurance and letting myself learn to sit with the anxiety and then ask myself, is this coming from this relationship or is it coming from that past trauma? And so that is probably the most powerful change I've made moving into a more secure attachment.
It feels like what you're doing is trying to like regulate the nervous
Yes.
system, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that
That's
does do
that happens to be step 2.
okay? I am nailing this test right now. Man, do I get a degree after this? A certificate of some kind?
You can be a doctor too.
All right, well, tell us about it.
So, regulating your nervous system. So, like, I just used that example of learning to recognize my anxiety and my anxious responses. Well, I couldn't do that when I didn't have a regulated nervous system because I was always anxious. I was anxious all the time. And this was before my diagnosis and before I got on, my ADHD medications, I was anxious just baseline all the time. And it was only once I started to learn how to regulate my nervous system after I got medicated that I was able to start recognizing that. And this isn't something that you can just think yourself into. So I couldn't just turn off the anxiety. I had to learn how to ground my body. And then that's how I learned to regulate my system, my nervous system, before I react out of that old pattern. And because a lot of people who are neurodivergent experience sensory overload and easily experience emotional dysregulation, we've been masking for most of our lives, and all of that leads to a delayed processing of your feelings. These often push our nervous system into threat mode, into protection mode. And you can't learn and grow and change when you're feeling unsafe. I talked in a previous episode about the power of the pause, like just taking that minute to think about what that reaction is before you respond, doing some movement, delaying your conversations until you have a chance to respond out of security and safety instead of fear.
As we sort of step through this, what is changing? Like, what's the communication style look like as you're working down these steps that you're talking about?
I think the biggest change is I'm much more gentle in how I address things with people. I think my anxious attachment, because it drove from so much fear, that I learned to be just more okay with what I was saying. Like, I recently had a friend ask me to watch his dog overnight. It's a dog that doesn't know my puppy, and this was a big ask. And my initial reaction was to knee jerk to say no. And I was like, okay, wait a second. Let's think about this for a second. I thought through it and was like, I told him, I'm like, I need a moment. I need to think about this. I need to consider the implications of it before I give an answer. Came back and was like, no, I can't do this, because I thought it through. I'm like, I'm not reacting. I'm not saying no out of any kind of power control or anything like that. Through that, I get to what is our third step, which is being able to name my needs without apology, without saying I'm sorry for it. And what I said to my friend was, hey, I would love to do this for you. I'd love to be there for you. But because our dogs don't know each other, because my dog is still a puppy, like, this is just too much. It's going to be bad for them and it's going to be bad for me. And that's going to make it just messy for everybody. And being able to just say, I don't have the space for this without saying sorry. I didn't apologize for it. I just said, this isn't going to work.
You got 3 of the steps.
Yes.
I segued you perfectly into that one.
You did.
I'm telling you, I'm getting a certificate at the end of this of some kind. Even if it's one that you make on Canva, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I mean, it's interesting when we think about show 1 versus this show, which I
Right.
don't even know what number we're on. I've learned so much from this.
Yeah. This
which is great.
Process.
It's,
Yeah.
it's awesome. I love it.
Yep.
Okay. So let's jump to step 4 then.
So step 3 is kind of, internal, right? It's a
Right.
part of you, learning to not feel shame for having needs and voicing them. So step 4 is relational. So this is where you take that step when you have maybe reacted out of your past attachment styles and you fix the relationship. So you practice repair, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said at the start, secure attachment is not the absence of conflict. It doesn't mean you're not going to be having a relationship conflict. No relationship is ever going to run perfectly smoothly. It's something a lot of us haven't learned is how to repair after conflicts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure we acknowledge that we messed up and that it caused harm to the relationship. We want to clarify if there were misunderstandings. You want to validate the feelings of the person you're in the relationship with, and you want to validate your feelings too and say, hey, this is where I was, and I am working through this, etc. And you want to outline some concrete ways to move forward and learn how to reconnect after the tension.
That obviously it involves both parties.
Yes.
It's hard
One
to,
person cannot just repair.
yeah, exactly. So is this about also picking the right people, the right person? Is this about, like, choosing the relationships in advance that support this type of thing, or recognizing as you're going through a relationship, like, oh, this is one that can take this path, this is
Yeah,
one that cannot, like, doing that for
absolutely.
yourself and evaluating it, is that like a big key to this?
That's a big piece of it. Yeah. You can't be the only person repairing in a relationship because then the relationship is imbalanced for other reasons. And it's hard. Moving through relationships that haven't been secure into a secure state or into a secure process involves everybody acknowledging and healing in a way. Step 5 is choosing relationships that support security. And this is a hard one because a lot of us are in, established relationships and needing to move into a secure relationship and a relationship that supports security means creating an environment where your communication is respected, where your emotions aren't punished, and where your autonomy is allowed. And a lot of times that means establishing new boundaries and maybe making choices to be in different relationships and letting go of dynamics that have relied on that insecurity, on those insecure patterns in order to exist.
Hmm. Okay, so we we got to the fifth step without,
We
like,
did.
it just magically happened there. So what the thing is, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things. Can you review the five? Just give me the five again so that
Sure.
we're on the same page, because I don't want to be tested on this later and not know.
I might, yes, you never know now, right? I've
Exactly. You got to
established
be
the
prepared.
pattern that I might quiz Russ about this.
Exactly. You have. All right. So what are the five?
we
Let's start
have
at the top.
we have recognizing your attachment patterns, so seeing what you've done in the past and what your history is, potentially identifying what the source of some of your attachment wounds are. Second is learning to regulate your nervous system before you respond. So that is the power of the pause. It is taking that time to take a moment to make sure your nervous system is regulated and recognize if you're responding out of this moment or out of a past wound. Step 3 is learning to name your needs without apologizing for it, not feeling shame that you have needs and being able to just clearly state what your needs are. Step 4 is practicing repair. It's learning how to fix after there has been conflict or misunderstanding or complication in the relationship. And like I said, this is not something a lot of us learned as children, but it's something I taught my daughter how to do. And that's been super powerful for both of us. And 5 is choosing relationships that support security. So putting your energy into relationships that are building safe connections for both parties and recognizing that not all relationships might be able to move into that space. But everyone can if all parties are willing to do the work. I hate that phrase, do the work, but it applies
Uh,
here.
but I mean, that's kind of, I mean, it doesn't have to take on I'm going out and I got to dig a ditch doing the
Right.
work.
Right.
It's probably harder, but I think saying it as it is doing the work. It's doing
Right.
the day-to-day needs
Yep.
of what has to happen to make things better, to make
Yep.
things
Exactly.
improve,
It's a
so that
skill
it's
set.
better
This
for you.
this is
Yeah.
all, secure attachment is a skill set that you can work toward. And as I often say, don't shame yourself if you don't take these steps perfectly. If you don't walk this perfectly, if you still slip, if you
Mhm.
still slide, if you don't repair really well, if you apologize for having needs as you're kind of in this process of healing. Healing is a back and forth process. Nothing is linear in this. Recognizing those small steps are how you build toward safety. One regulated conversation, one honest need, one repaired conflict. And that's how you take a step on the path to a secure attachment.
Digging a ditch. It's not easy when you do it once, but if you do it multiple times, it gets easier. You're building that
Yeah,
muscle,
you're building the muscle.
learning, recognizing, and trying it again going forward.
Exactly. Like every time you move away from your insecure attachments, every micro bid you make, every time you ask for a small need to be met, every one of those moments strengthens your skill set for toward secure attachment.
Because somebody listening right now might be saying, I'm nowhere near
Right.
secure attachment, right? What would
Yep.
you say to them?
I would say everybody can do this. Everybody can do this. And just the fact that you're listening to this podcast and listening to me grill Russ on what attachment styles are
Right?
means you've already made motions toward it. You're here. You're here. And we are so glad you're here listening to the show and listening to us talk about this.
Like I said earlier, and I know I'm on the podcast, so it feels like I'm just being like the promotional guy, but you do really teach us things on this podcast.
Yep.
And it really, like, I see it coming into play, whether it's in the romantic relationship or it's in a friendship or it's even with coworkers. So I see
Yep.
the stuff that you're talking about coming into play in
It's
so
made our
many.
friendship stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And it forces us to talk to each other every single week. That gets tough.
That's true.
And I don't have to book a clarity call to chat.
You don't. You get
Right.
coaching all the time.
I do.
You are going to be my success story.
Exactly.
If you are listening and you would like a dynamic that is like Russ and I, please book a free 30-minute clarity call. The link is in the description to sign up. And I'd love to talk with you about how you can make repair like this.
And the nerd notes as well.
And the nerd notes is in the show description too.